Okay, good evening. This is a virtual stakeholders meeting sponsored by the City of Bowie Planning Department. I'm Joe Minert, the City of Bowie Planning Director. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting. This is a virtual stakeholders meeting for the Hayden property subdivision. It's preliminary plan 4-21027 located on 10th Street in Old Town Bowie. This meeting tonight will be a presentation by the property owner and their engineer. Will be able to ask questions. The purpose of a stakeholders meeting is really to become informed about the project that's proposed, and we allow all of the attendees to ask questions through the Q&A function of the program here. So the participants are in listen-only mode. We do not respond to raised hands. So the meeting will be recorded and will be placed on the city website for future reference. And so only those who have registered are able to participate. And again, if you want to ask your questions through the question and answer function, I will read the questions after the presentation is concluded. So at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Doug Tilley, representing the property owner.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Doug Tilley. I'm the Vice President of Engineering and Surveying with O'Connell & Lawrence. I'm a professional engineer and also a registered professional land surveyor. Ms. Linda Hayden is here with us. She's the property owner, representing Ray's Towing Service, LLC, who is the applicant in this particular case. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to present, and I appreciate you all having us. Glad to be here. Give me just one moment while I share my screen for the presentation. All right. So here we go. So this is, as Mr. Minert had said, a City of Bowie stakeholders meeting for a preliminary plan of subdivision. It's a 4-lot residential subdivision located on what's currently called parcel 95. That's the Hayden property. It has frontages on 2 streets, 10th Street and Zug Road. It's an L-shaped property with address of 12705 10th. And 8510 Zug Road. And you can see the owner, applicant, engineer, surveyor information listed below herein. So these are just some of the associated plan reviews and approvals as we are going through some concurrent procedures with for this particular application. As Joe had mentioned, the application number for the preliminary plan of subdivision is 4-21027. That document is filed with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission at Prince George's County, located in Upper Marlboro. There's also what's called a TCP1 or a Type 1 TCP. That's a tree conservation plan that's filed in association with that particular application by our landscape architect / environmental consultant, Norton Land Design. We have a site development concept plan, which is filed by the Prince George's County Department, which is filed with, the Prince George's County Department of Permits, Inspections, and Enforcement. DPI, as they're commonly known. You can see the case number there, 34285-2021-00. That document is in review with DPI right now. The site development concept plan is also commonly known as a stormwater management concept plan. It typically shows the site layout, but also how we are addressing stormwater management requirements on this particular project. We've also filed a natural resources inventory for stand delineation that is commonly known as an NRI FSD. You can see the application number down there on that listing, NRI-119-2020. That document has been approved, and NRI FSD is what I would term as an environmental survey of the site. It basically surveys on-site environmental conditions, so your forested areas, any wetlands, floodplains, things of that nature. And finally, we're also going through a use and occupancy procedure for a certified non-conforming use. You can see the case number listed under the application number column 11494-2021-0. That is in review with the Department of Permits, Inspections, and Enforcement. That is an ongoing process as well. Moving to the next slide. So this is simply a blow up of an existing conditions drawing that O'Connell and Lawrence put together. It's based on a boundary and topographic survey that we performed. And you can see some of the conditions on the property as it stands right now. The green line shows the limits of parcel 95, which is the property in question, and the size is listed directly beneath it. the limits of the towing service lot. So the front of the property that fronts on 10th Street houses Ray's Towing Service with access directly onto 10th Street. And the residential portion of the property fronts directly on Zug Road with the residence, a gazebo, a garage, a carport, a driveway, and some other on-site development items, as you can see on this particular drawing. This is a field run document that's done based on a survey that was performed by O'Connell and Lawrence by field staff working directly for me. Excuse me. Moving on to the proposed subdivision. So it's a 4-lot residential subdivision. Currently, there is a residential house and the towing service on the property right now, and you can see the proposed lines of division as has been filed with MNC PPC right now. 4 lots, 2 lots fronting on 10th Street, 2 lots fronting on Zug Road. Couple things to note on this particular slide. Number one, you can see that lot 1 and 2 are slightly askew from each other. The reason for that is to meet certain lot width requirements at the building frontage without having to apply for and obtain a variance on those particular elements. Lot 3 and 4 are split slightly differently, and you can see kind of the little notched section on lot 3 to account for minimum lot size requirements. There are dedications that are proposed as part of this individual subdivision out front. For those that don't deal with a lot of development style projects, park and planning and/or the Department of Public Works and Transportation, who will review this application as part of the development process, will regularly request that owners provide dedication to public roads to satisfy master plan requirements or provide for public street frontage. And those are proposed in accordance with the relevant local master plan herein. And you can see the areas shown in those kind of blue boxes with the honeycomb hatch behind it. And as I stated previously, we have no requested variances on this project. We initially thought we were going to have one, and that has since been rescinded. So this is just a very sort of high level look at the proposed development layout. You can see lot 3, which is the kind of notched lot that I discussed previously, which has the existing residence on it right now, is generally proposed to remain as is. That existing residence is proposed to stay. And we are proposing 3 separate single family dwelling units of approximately 2,000 square foot each. You can see them kind of in the purple boxes there. The house, the deck, and the gazebo is proposed to remain. And we have some driveway extensions that are going to need to be required. The existing driveway off of Zug Road is intended to remain with some minor extensions to service the new house and also provide suitable parking. And a new driveway will be required off of 10th Street. You can see kind of the approximate location right there. One thing that I'm going to close with, but I want to just reiterate herein, is that these types of development projects are ongoing. They're fluid procedures. And so you occasionally will get tweaks as you move through, but this is the overall this is the conceptual design as is proposed right now. We're not expecting major changes from what you see here on. But I just want to be very clear about that there's a very strong likelihood that final conditions might look a little bit different than what you see here on. We also have a series of proposed utility connections out on Zug Road and out on 10th Street: water, sanitary service, electric, the normal kinds of things that you would have to have a single family dwelling unit. Tree conservation. What you see here is a blow up of the filed type 1 tree conservation plan. That's the document that's filed with the preliminary plan of subdivision, which shows how we're meeting our forest conservation requirements or tree conservation requirements. In this particular case, because of the size of the lots, tree conservation is proposed to be provided via fee in lieu. And that's something that was specifically required based on the size of the lots here on, because they're basically just over 20,000 square foot a pop. You can see that there are 3 champion specimen trees located in/near the project. None of them are actually on the property in question here. Only one of them really impacts the property that we're dealing with. You can see the location of what's listed as number 1, a 30-inch white oak, which has a critical root zone that generally extends slightly onto the subject property. That will be protected during development. Moving forward. I'm sorry, I didn't discuss the area of tree removal, which you can see down at the sort of the bottom left-hand corner of the page thereon. I wouldn't classify that as any sort of, it's not classified as a very superbly well-defined tree stand in the back corner there. It's a lot of scrub, but that area is, a significant amount of that area is proposed to be removed as part of this development. There's also a pretty significant area of bamboo down in there, which nobody particularly cares for. So the site development concept plan, as I previously stated, the site development concept plan is analogous, often referred to as a stormwater management concept plan. This is just the terminology that's used by DPI. Our development is subject to approval of the concept plan. It has been submitted. It has not been formally approved by DPI at this time. The stormwater management requirements are somewhat limited, or they're slightly reduced by the fact that we are proposing to keep one of the existing houses on the property. So the required stormwater management for that individual lot is lessened significantly because there's not much disturbance on that location. The proposed type of site stormwater management is microbiome retention boxes. For those that don't know what a microbiome retention facility is, it is a stormwater management device that provides treatment by allowing water to naturally percolate through an excavated area that includes a engineered media, a sand layer, and a gravel layer that sits below the visible grade. Water is slowed down from returning to the natural environment and is also treated as it goes through this individual media. This is a series of plants, and also the media itself provides a certain amount of treatment. In the case of this particular site, we had very poor infiltrative properties on the subject soils and also a relatively high water table. And as such, we're using planter boxes instead of microbiome retention facilities that are designed to naturally percolate into the ground. So these have all the characteristics of a bioretention facility, but they're all enclosed within a concrete box that's attached to the house. You can see that they all have outfall points. Those are coming from piped under drains in those facilities that naturally drain towards the bottom left corner of the page, or this really the bottom of the page right there, which is the low spot. There is an existing storm drain inlet down in that location that is not proposed to be modified herein. Excuse me. And you can see the flow path down there. There's no impacts to any residential properties anticipated as part of this development, particularly as it relates to drainage. So that largely discusses the individual layout of the site, the proposed layout of the site and how we're treating some of the sort of critical development efforts. And I also just wanted to make a brief discussion of the existing towing site operations. We are proposing to maintain the towing site operations for an extended period of time, even as the subdivision goes forth. The residence is just a residential property. I think everyone's clear on that. There's really nothing to discuss from an operations standpoint here on. Towing operations are as follows: Monday to Friday, standard hours are 8 to 6. Saturday, Sunday, 9 to 12, although there is 24-hour on-call service. There's 4 full-time staff members, 3 vehicles performing tow impound services for such entities as Bowie State, a number of local shopping centers, 3 fire and rescue locations in the city and just beyond, tow betweens for various auto repair dealers, transferring cars back and forth if someone body shop to dealer to transmission facility, whatever the case may be, and had previously performed tow and impound services for the city of Bowie Police. May start again in the future, from what I understand. The Bowie State Shopping Center local holds have 30-day holds, whereas the city of Bowie Police has a 60-day hold. The towing service is proposed to remain until the owner decides to dissolve the business, even after the subdivision is completed. That's an ongoing discussion with park planning, but that's the intention of this subdivision. And with that, that is largely what I wanted to discuss and bring everyone up to speed on with what is being proposed herein. We feel we have a good plan for how to attack this individual subdivision. We think this is a net benefit to the city. providing suitable residential housing in a place that's largely residential to start with already. But also working to bring, the towing service business, which, is proposed to remain for an extended period of time, into compliance as a certified non-conforming use within both the city and also within Prince George's County. As I had previously stated, I just want to be very clear that this is a very ongoing, it's an ongoing process. It's a fluid process. We expect some minor tweaks here and there, but this is our proposed plan. So you're not going to, I don't believe you're going to see anything significantly changing from what you see here on, besides sort of these minor modifications, tweaks to address comments as they come in from staff of the various agencies. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for their time and attention, and and I'm here to answer questions as they come in, and we're happy to do so. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your attention. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks a lot, Doug. That was a very informative presentation. Just for the stakeholders who may have gotten on the call late, I'm Joe Minor, the City of Bowie Planning Director, and this is a stakeholders meeting sponsored by the Planning Department in Bowie. And at this point, we would want to try to get any questions that the stakeholders may have, and you need to submit those using the Q&A function in Zoom. So we will read the questions as they come in, and we'll continue as long as there are new topics being covered. And hopefully we'll get all the questions, all the answers that you need to your questions. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be placed on the city website. So I will go ahead and read a couple of the questions that have come in, and Doug, I suppose you can answer them. The first question is, your tow service hours listed are not accurate as listed, and they're not clearly not adhering to those. So that's more of a comment than a question. The second question is, how do you propose to remove the hazardous waste currently on the property?
So just Joe, if you don't mind, I'm going to address the first item as well. From the questioner is, I have spoken to management on site. Those are the hours that I was provided with. I can relay that comment to them, and I'm happy to do so. Regarding the second question that's listed, we filed a phase 1 ESA, an environmental site assessment, as part of our preliminary plan here on. As part of our preliminary plan application with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. That document will be available and will be filed. It's going to be on Park and Planning's website because it's part of our filing, and it discusses some of the hazardous waste material removal as provided. If there's further information related to that, it will come forth as the overall development process proceeds. What I can say is that it's intended to be done in accordance with all OSHA, MOSHA, and environmental regulations as required. Obviously, staff is aware of the use of the property as a towing service lot. And as such, all the proper protocols will be followed.
Okay, thank you, Doug. I don't see any additional questions at the moment, but I did have a question myself on your plan. There was kind of a heavy dashed line along the left side of the drawing. And I was wondering if you could explain what that heavy dashed line represents.
Yes. Would it be helpful if I shared my screen again, Joe?
Sure, it would be helpful to take a look at what that is.
Okay, very good. Let me do that, Jimmy. Just one moment.
And again, to the stakeholders, if you have any additional questions, please type them into the Q&A and I'll read them.
So, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, I think I know what you're referring to, but let me just make sure.
Yeah, there it is.
You're talking about this line right here?
Yes.
That's a storm drain. It's a large storm drain that collects at the corner of 10th Street here, extends partially through some of the adjoining properties and partially through the subject property. There's a storm drain inlet or a concrete inlet that's down in this corner, concrete inlet box that's down in this corner right here, and then it extends through underneath the railroad tracks. So that's what that is.
Okay, is there an easement on the property for that part of it that runs across the corner of the property?
At the moment, there is not. There is one proposed with this application.
Okay, that's good to hear. Okay, I would encourage the stakeholders, if you have any other questions, to please submit them. And if we don't have any other questions, the meeting will end relatively soon. I did want to mention that the city's review process will probably be one that takes us to the city council with this 4-lot subdivision. At this time, the Park and Planning Commission is in the process of beginning their review, so we don't really have enough information yet to schedule a city council hearing. But at the time that we receive the information, probably in the next couple of months, we'll schedule a city council meeting and we'll put a public notice out just like we did for this meeting. We do have a question that came in from a stakeholder. That question is, my property on Brady Avenue backs to the rear of the tow lot and the rear of the residential property. Will trees that are taken down be replaced?
So, yeah, the answer to that question is likely not. And the reason why is this: the trees are not intended to be taken down until such time as the individual residential lots on, excuse me, let me say that again. Until such time as the residential lots are developed at the tow lot. So they're not going to be imminently removed. Prince George's County has a landscape manual that proposes proposes buffers between properties that are, of different sort of use classifications. So once the property is redeveloped, you're going to have a residential lot backing up to a residential lot, which will not require landscape buffering. With that being said, there is always the possibility for a couple things. Number one is that individual trees may or may not be taken down by the final developer. This is simply what's proposed as part of the development process. They don't necessarily have to take the trees down during final permit stage. Secondly, there also may be conditioning enforced by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning that would require certain trees to be replaced on these items. We just don't have that level of detail just yet. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, I think it covered it. We do have another question that came in, and the question is, how long can this drag out? I guess assuming this is the process, how long can this drag out to enable the tow lot to continue to operate the way they are now?
With that particular question, my presumption is that it's sort of related to the individual or the initial question. However, I will try and give a complete answer to that question. As far as the overall subdivision process itself, it can be a long, extended process where we've done a lot of the initial upfront work with some of the design documents that you've seen put forth here on. I would expect that the overall subdivision process is not expected to take longer than another 4 months, plus or minus. Obviously, there's some depending factors on that, including comments that received from staff members who are reviewers, or other sort of unknown elements at this time, because the development process is a bit of an unknown at times. With that being said, the tow lot, as previously stated, is not intended to be redeveloped, even with the overall development process sort of concluding, so to speak. So it could extend longer than that. I hope that answered the question. As far as sort of the operational element of the tow lot, that is not really my area of expertise. What I can do is relay concerns to the owner of the tow lot, as listed here on about the hours, so on and so forth, and just at least mention these comments to them. But that, operationally, I have no control over how the tow lot operates on a day-to-day basis.
Doug, you had a slide at the beginning that talked about the different plans that you were processing, and the one on the bottom of the screen was a non-conforming use certification.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you could update us about that, because it relates to the stakeholders' question. It's under review now, and how soon do you expect to have an outcome from that? That's
correct. So to just fill in the stakeholder on what we're going through here, what we're operating with here. The tow lot does have a use and occupancy permit. It does, what it is this particular use is not typically approved within this particular zone. So, however, the actual lot itself predates the zoning code. So in this particular case, we're filing to get that corrected so that the use is considered certified non-conforming within the residential, within this residential zone. It's an RR zone. Excuse me. So that process is under review at the moment. I would expect that particular process to be completed well before the subdivision process, and for the use and occupancy to certify said non-conforming use well in advance. My hope is within the next 6 weeks, we're going to have an outcome on that. Although again, it's a procedural item, and it's hard to make accurate predictions necessarily on development items here on, with the added bit of COVID still ongoing. It's been very difficult to predict timetables on these types of elements. My hope is that, or not, it's not my hope. My strong belief is that will be in place prior to the actual subdivision ongoing with a true use and occupancy with this certified non-conforming use prior to the subdivision being accepted by planning board. Sorry, wrong. Planning commission is Gaithersburg. Planning board is Prince George's County.
Okay, there's a question that just came in that's related, and it's continuing this conversation about non-conforming use. And the stakeholder says, what does that mean as far as applying for a non-conforming use? Can you explain that, Doug? And to my understanding, I believe the county has been involved in some enforcement activity on the property that goes beyond just the certifying of the towing business. And there may be an indefinite timetable to that. Can you provide any background for us on these questions?
Yeah, on the non-conforming use, I absolutely can. So basically, there are certain uses within Prince George's County, within the city of Bowie, and really within probably any jurisdiction in the country that has zoning enforcement, and also has zoning regulations in place for what types of businesses can and can't operate in certain zones. In this particular instance, the tow lot, if you read the Prince George's County zoning code, is not permitted to operate in an RR zone, given the way that the zoning code reads. Now, there are several caveats to that where you can certify particular businesses or particular uses as non-conforming. And this particular instance qualifies as one of them because the use of this particular business predates the actual code that enforces it, if that makes sense. So zoning code came into effect, I believe it was 62, while the tow lot dates back from the 40s. So because it's operated in those conditions for longer than the actual law was on the books, it's pseudo grandfathered in, I guess is one way to put it. We simply have to provide enough documentation to the jurisdictional entity to show them that is actually the case. So that's what certifying a non-conforming use is. It's a non-conforming use by the letter of the law but can be certified as such. It can be certified to be approvable for use because of some condition. In this case, since it predates the actual zoning code itself. I hope that explained I hope that was able to answer that question.
And do you have any other information about enforcement activities that the county may be engaged in currently?
Only that there was some sort of enforcement activity about particular activities occurring, but I don't know much more than that. My understanding is that our application has been filed with the county and it's under review by DPI. I don't know if that triggered any enforcement. I don't know if that was a trigger for any enforcement, but I do understand that there was some enforcement ongoing for some certain types of activities that needed to be resolved, I guess, and that's underway. That's what I understand at this point. So I hope that clarifies a little bit.
Okay, yeah. And another question came in. It's again related to this topic of the non-conforming use. And the question is this applying for a zoning change? And I think I can answer this partially, that it's not actually changing the zoning of the land, but it's, as Doug described it, it is getting permission to grandfather or validate something that had already been there when the county created the zoning in the first place. And so it's really, I think, because the property owner name is not the same name that's on the old use and occupancy permit, they needed a new use and occupancy permit. So they have to go through this process of certifying and proving that the use pre-existed the zoning and that it has continuously operated. And if they can prove those things, then they would be entitled to getting a certification, which then allows them to continue with the use that they have been permitted to have, which is the towing business. The other activities on the property are the things that I'm referring to that may not fall within the realm of a towing business. And I think the county is pursuing that as a separate matter because the zoning ordinance does not allow those types of activities. And so unless the property was rezoned and going through a zoning change, to commercial or some other type of zone, industrial, the types of uses and activities that are going on out there beyond the towing business, that may be a way to make those uses legal. But at this time, I think it's going to take some time for the county to work through their enforcement activities, as I understand it. And at this point, you're just going to have to wait and wait for some results to come out on that. And again, it's on a separate track. It's not part of the certification of the towing business. It's not part of the subdivision that we're talking about tonight. And I don't know if you have anything more to add, but that's kind of my take on things where they stand right now, Doug.
Yes, I think that's a fair assessment. And yes, the intention, there's no rezoning proposed as part of this. It's always intended to be an RR zone.
Okay, very good. We have a couple more questions that came in, and let me go ahead and read them. If you read the definition of tow lot in the county code, they clearly are not operating under the UNO they are pursuing. So if this site plan is approved and they keep operating the tow lot, are they legally obligated to operate the tow lot as written in the county code? That's pretty much what we just talked about, but Doug, can you summarize, maybe give a concise answer to that question?
Yes, I can. What I believe one of the conditions of approval of the subdivision plan or the site plan that you've seen here on is that there is going to be a certified non-conforming use on this property. And so as part of that, the county will require the towing business to operate as permitted on their use and occupancy. So I think that answers that question. It's a process that we're pursuing and has taken some time and by that I'm referring to the use and occupancy certified non-conforming use. But yes, that's my belief, is that they will, the tow lot will be operating within the confines of their use and occupancy as written. The subdivision plan itself is sort of a separate item. However, the certification of the non-conforming use is something that is going to be a requirement such that the subdivision plan is approvable by Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. So that's why it's in the process of being pursued. It's going to be a requirement for approval.
Okay, and then a follow-up question was so that the property will remain residential property.
100%.
So I guess, but for the continuation of the towing business as a certified use, it's allowed to continue. Once it's certified, the rest of the property would be in a residential condition.
That is correct. And it's going to remain zoned residentially. That is correct. But yes, that's a correct statement, Joe.
Okay. Well, very good. I don't know if the stakeholders have any other topics they'd like to cover or questions they'd like to ask about this particular plan. Again, it's only 4 residential lots as Doug has described them. Here's one additional question. If the site plan is approved, and we're talking about a subdivision tonight. That's what the plan is that's on the table tonight. So it's not a site plan, it's a subdivision plan. If the plan is approved, how long do they have to build the residential homes? And Doug, I don't know that if you mentioned the recordation process that follows the approval of the preliminary plan, but why don't you talk about that? That pretty
Sure.
much verifies or entitles the property owner to have those residential lots forever.
Yes, that's a correct statement. So to answer the question, there isn't really a set timetable on that sort of item, although I will make some caveat statements here in a moment if you bear with me. So just for the benefit of everyone on this discussion, once the actual subdivision plan is approved, we also have to go through the recordation process, meaning we would have to file a plat of recordation or a subdivision plat as it's commonly known, that is reviewable and approvable also by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and then is filed among the land records of Prince George's County, Maryland. That is the formal document that formally creates the subdivision. Typically, that will reference an approved preliminary plan of subdivision on it, so it will reference back to any conditions of approval, so on and so forth. Regarding the actual timetable, once those individual lots are created, there's no set timetable for how long, a developer has to actually build said residential homes. There are a couple things to keep in mind. There will be a site development concept plan on the record that discusses, how stormwater management is treated. So, if the laws change, then, a future developer may have to modify how they manage treating their stormwater management on site. But there's no set timetable for something like that. Lots developed or created lots, recorded lots stay undeveloped for extended periods of time all over the place. There's no set timetable, but for, requirements associated with, stormwater management or regulations that could be updated in the future. But with all that being said, there are typically ways to develop around those types of, regulations or modify your design accordingly, because there will be, additional permit drawings that are required in the future for the actual construction of the residential homes.
And those would be individual building permits by individuals who buy the lots. Probably you're not going to have a builder come in and build 4 houses at one time. It'll just be individual people coming in, buying a lot, and then getting a building permit to build their house on.
I can't speak to that necessarily. I don't know, but I guess anything's possible. But
Okay.
That would be one way it could be approached, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've covered quite a few topics here tonight. I mentioned that this plan will go to the city council at some point in the coming months. And that would be a public hearing item for the council more than likely. So there would be an opportunity for people to participate. If anyone has questions after this meeting tonight, you're free to contact Mr. Tilley or also contact the planning department in my office at City Hall with any questions that you have. And at this point, I guess we're through the questions, and we appreciate everyone's time tonight. Again, if you have any follow-up, please contact us, and we're happy that you came out tonight. And just one last question from the stakeholders. So after the site development is potentially approved, these lots could remain as they are for a while. So the development of these lots could take years. And I think we answered that question. The answer is it's kind of up in the air. Once they're recorded, there's no immediate need to build. They could be built sooner rather than later. They could be built one at a time. They could sit there as recorded lots. One thing about recording a subdivision plat is that the taxes go up on the property. So they're more valuable properties because they've been through the approval process. They've been set up for development, and they become more valuable, and the taxes go up. So at some point, the owner of the property is likely to then put those lots on the market so that they can sell and make good on their investment. So I think that answers that final question. All right, well, I'd like to wrap up. I think we've covered a lot tonight and appreciate everyone's time tonight. And again, if you have questions, please contact the planning department or please contact the engineer, Mr. Doug Tilley. And thank you and have a good evening.
Thanks for having us, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you.